Hi YouTube. Today we're going to talk about something that's close to my heart. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I'm going to go over the Colt Firearms company and some of the good stuff they've done over the years, some of the mistakes that I feel they've made, and I just want to let everybody know that I am not a Colt Firearms expert. I am not a historian. I'm just a simple guy who likes this brand, and I thought I would talk about it for a little while and tell you what I thought about this company, the direction they've gone, the direction they're going now, and all that kind of stuff. So what we have here, we got a selection of stuff sitting here in front of us. This can't represent the entire company, but this is what I have to offer today. And I'm gonna use a couple of these things as examples as I talk about the Colt Firearm Company and what they've done in the past and what they continue to do in the future. So let's start off by saying every one of these guns are unloaded. They've all been safety checked. As I pick them up, I will show you there's nothing in them. If that's not good enough for you, you probably need to turn this video off, because I'm telling you, every one of them's been safety checked, and I will show you one by one as I pick them up. I'm not going to waste 5 minutes of my time sitting there and safety checking each firearm as I pick them up. So we're going to start off with a little bit of the history of Colt. Colt was started by a man named Samuel Colt. He was kind of a perfectionist, and he started this company in 1855 in Hartford, Connecticut. And he put his plant out by the Connecticut River, and he pretty much was very similar to another iconic American named Henry Ford. Is he actually perfected the assembly line. And what he did is he's the one that came up with the 10-hour workday, and he built kind of like a country club, if you will, on his property for the workers to enjoy their downtime and do stuff like that. And what that does, it amps up production because you can run a couple shifts, and you can keep the workers happy, so they're guaranteed to put out quality stuff. Because like I said, he was a perfectionist. He didn't like subpar stuff in any way. So he had made a couple attempts in the earlier years to make a repeating revolver, and a couple things happened here and there, and pretty much they were failures. Well, Samuel Colt got his big break in 1873 when he came up with the single action army. So the single action army is a single action only repeating revolver. It has a loading gate on the side. You load them one by one, and they were usually chambered in .45 long Colt, which is a caliber that Colt came up with. And it was absolutely a game changer. So there's a few nicknames for it. It's called the Peacekeepers, the gun that won the West, SAA, Single Action Army, 1873, whatever you want to call it. It was the model 1873 Single Action Army. And the Army adopted that design in 1873. Colt got the contract to do it, and that's where the races started for the Colt Patent Firearm Company. And I'm telling you, this was a game changer. You had Texas Rangers, law enforcement, cowboys. I mean, there's nobody that doesn't know what a Colt Single Action Army looks like. I wish I had one here in front of me, but I do not, unfortunately. But basically what a single action army was it's a revolver. Here, I'll show you that this gun's unloaded so nobody cries. It's a revolver, and the cylinder didn't sling out like that. There was a little lift gate that goes on the side. You insert the shells in one time, and instead of every time you pulled the hammer back, you fired it, you had to pull it back again. So it was single action only. Whereas all these revolvers here are double action. You can pull the trigger like this and fire it. You couldn't do that with the single action army. So they were actually kind of dangerous, because when you pulled the hammer back, it had a firing pin that stuck out of it and went right through the frame into it. So if you carried one loaded in the cylinder on there, I mean, there was a good possibility it could go off going over bumps on your horse or something like that. And a lot of people only carried them with 5 rounds in them. And a lot of people do that today, that cowboy action shoot. I do not understand that, because I think if you can't handle a firearm, shoot it in a controlled environment, then that you feel you have to put 6 rounds in it or 5 rounds in it, then you probably don't need to be shooting firearms. And I've seen some pretty prevalent people that still do this, and it absolutely blows my mind. But that's another rabbit hole I'll go down on another day. But single action Army absolutely changed everything. And they rode that horse literally until until World War I came around. So World War I comes around, and Colt actually employed a guy named John Browning. John Browning had designed a couple semi-automatic handguns for Colt while he worked there. Well, he no longer worked there, and the Army was actually asking for a semi-automatic handgun. And they had certain specifications they wanted. They wanted it to be 45 caliber. They wanted it to be semi-automatic, single action only, have a safety on it, the whole 9 yards. I don't know all the specifics, but John Browning designed what is now known as the 1911. He designed that in 1911. And this is actually one from World War I era. This is from 1918, but it's actually the first design of the 1911. This is actually a Colt from World War I. It says right on the side of it, model of 1911, United States Army, and it says right on here, United States property. So this was actually a military issued Colt 1911. So Colt amped up and started making these things for the United States government. This was their second crack at making a military handgun. And folks, I know I'm going to lose a lot of people over this, because, I've been getting a lot of backlash over this 45 ACP thing, but one of their demands was they wanted a 45 caliber handgun because it has knockdown power. The 9mm the Germans were using did not. We did not want to use a 9mm. They wanted a 45. So all the people that are butthurt because they like 9mm and they think I hate 9mm, turn it off, because I'm not going to give you any sympathy. The 45 is what they wanted. They wanted it for a reason. And you know what? They won the war with it. So Colt bought the rights to it. They started manufacturing these things, and they were in such high demand that Colt actually couldn't meet the demand. Even though they were the best manufacturing company probably in the country, they're the best at their craft, they actually had to bring other companies in. And if you were a manufacturing company and you thought you could tool up to manufacture firearms, you got a crack at it. So you had typewriter companies like Remington Rand. You had the Singer Sewing Machine Company, did a few of them, and those are the real expensive ones because they didn't do many of them. They came in at the very end. By the time they got all tooled up and everything, they produced very few of them. And man, if you see one of them things, they're hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's just crazy. But basically, this is probably the most successful semi-automatic handgun ever produced of all time. This is the reason why semi-automatic handguns are popular today, is because of this gun. Well, in like the 20s, like 1924, they made a couple revisions over the original one. So they lengthened this little beaver tail thing, and they put scallops out in here, shortened the trigger, and just certain things, to give it a little bit of an improvement. And this is about the closest thing I have. This is a Colt, and it's got a little bit longer beaver tail right here to protect your hand a little bit. And it's just more like the A1 style. I wouldn't say exactly. This is later on down the road. This is from the 70s, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So they started producing them for World War II. Same thing. If you had a manufacturing company, they gave you the plans. Colt held all the patents for them. They were the exclusive person. They did not invent it. John Browning invented it, but they were the original producers, held all the patents and all the rights on the 1911 pistol. Well, after the war was over, all of the military demand just went down in 1945. It just all came to a crashing halt. They still produced these 1911s and all, but they were producing them mainly for the civilian market and everything. And Colt got into some pretty steep financial trouble because they mismanaged money. Like I'm going to tell you, they've done time after time after time after time. They mismanaged their money and their finances, and they got into some serious financial problems. Well, that's around the same time, around the 50s, they started noticing decline in sales of their double action revolvers that they came out at the beginning of the century, and they sold all those mainly to the civilian market, and then a lot of police departments adopted them because a double action is a lot more modern than a single action. And all the Colt revolvers were looking a little dated and everything, and they came out with this Colt Python, they call it. I'll show you, this one's not loaded either. This came out in 1955. This is probably the most iconic revolver that's ever came out, ever, of all time. Everybody knows what this is, just like they know the Colt 1911. So they came out with this Colt Python, and they did a lot of dressing up. So they put a full underlug on it. They put this ventilated rib on it. And this is supposed to be like a premium revolver. They put this wide spur target hammer on it. I mean, the best people, the best gunsmiths worked on them, did all this polish work on them. So if you look, when they came out, they were all in this royal blue color. This one here's another Colt Python. And if you look at the finish on this thing, it's absolutely stunning looking. And they only had a few people working on these things, and they got a big premium for them. They were pretty expensive to begin with because of all the polish work that had to go into these things, and only the best people touched them and all that. And so that instantly took off. That was a good thing. But these things were very expensive to make. It's just they were very labor intensive, and to the community out, the basic people, you walk into a gun store and you see something like this sitting there, and it's absolutely double of what the competitors are. You have to be sold that. You don't know that all the polish work went in and all that. All you know, it's just a .357 Magnum revolver, and it costs double of what a Smith & Wesson costs. So, over time, sales declined. These are mainly for the well-off people, that bought these things. But they continued on for many years, and then in the 60s, Eugene Stoner came up with the AR-15. We're just going to be very generic and call it the AR-15. It's very different variants of it and everything. Well, Colt was the one to go to manufacture this thing because they had all the manufacturing capabilities and all that stuff. So they started off with the AR-15, and I'm going to show you there's nothing in this either. The magazine's empty and the breech is open. The bolt's open, so you can see there's nothing in it. So they came up with the AR-15, and Colt won a contract to produce the mighty M16. And the M16 was basically a fully auto AR-15, 20 inches in length, 20-inch barrel, and all that. It looked very similar to this one. This is a 16-inch, but we'll talk about that one in a second, because that one has a little bit of historic value also. So they produced all the military's rifles for years, and once again they got involved in something that they probably shouldn't be getting involved in, and things like this came about. So they were awarded the smallest contract of anybody to produce bayonets, and this is actually a Colt manufactured bayonet. This is an M7 bayonet, and this fits right on the AR-15 on there. And they only made these for 1 year. They made them in 1964, and they gave them the smallest contract. And Colt also decided, well, we're a firearm company. We probably need to spend most of our resources producing firearms and fulfill this contract. So this didn't last very long. The bayonets didn't, but it says Colt 62315 right on it, Hartford, Connecticut. It's got a little Colt emblem. I've heard Imperial Knife Company actually made most of these for Colt. I do not know if that's true or not, but these are pretty rare. They're not expensive, they're just rare. Rare doesn't always mean expensive. They cost more than if you were to just go buy a regular Imperial bayonet. But anyway, this is a real Colt M7 bayonet. And I think they were contracted to make 30,000 of them. I don't even know if they made all 30,000 of them. I know it wasn't a lot. These things are a dime a dozen in every brand but Colt. This one's a real Colt one. So they made these rifles for years and years and years. They kept winning all these contracts. Well, around the 1980s, Colt was getting themselves into financial troubles again. And it just seems like an ongoing pattern with money mismanagement, poor leadership, and everything. Well, they ended up losing the M16 contract to FN. So FN started producing all the M16s, and Colt still made the M4, which was the shorter version. I think it was a 14-inch barrel that a real Colt M4 is. So Colt was still making those, and they continued to fulfill that contract. And around 2002, they had a big strike in the 80s. So it was the longest running labor strike of all time in the United States. It ran from like 1985 to like 1990, or maybe it was 84 to 1990. But I think it was 85 to 1990. It was a 5-year labor strike that went on. So they were having people, anybody that could work, and Colt's quality went down the tubes. I'm telling you, they went down the tubes, and that's why they lost contract to make the actual M16s, which was their bread and butter. And if you bought any Colt revolvers made after like 1985 to like 1990, quality went downhill. They were running into financial troubles. Like this one just barely makes the cut. This was an 84. So this was a year before the strike. This is the actual bright stainless Colt Python. So quality starts going downhill. They're all on strike. They lose their military contract for the M16s. All right, so they decided, well, we're going to put everything we can into making these M4s, the shorter ones. So they started doing away with things that the general public liked. They weren't paying attention to the general public anymore. So they said, we're going to produce the 1911, we're going to produce the single action army, and we're going to do away with everything else in handgun wise. So all these revolvers went away. They stopped making them altogether, and around 1999 they had ceased making all of them. Now, before I start getting all these bad comments and everything, I understand that they still made revolvers in the custom shop. A couple of these Pythons are made, but basically general production, they stopped making revolvers all around in 1999. Well, they split off in 2002, and they had Colt Defense, and then they had the Colt patent manufacturer that produced the 1911s. They were generally for the general public, and the Colt Defense was for law enforcement and military. Well, in 2004, they had the assault weapons ban lifted, and while there was an assault weapons ban on, that's when this thing was made. So they had to stamp these things. If you look on this side of this thing, it says restricted for military, government, law enforcement use only. That's because this was made during the assault weapons ban, and the general public could not buy this. This is what they call a government carbine. This is the Colt 6520. A little bit of an odd duck. It's not super rare, but most people know of the 6920. This is a 6520, so it has the pencil barrel And this was used by a lot of law enforcement officers because of its lightweight, little pencil barrel. And it's cool. It says government carbine right on the side of it. Let's see if I can get any of this to show up on this camera. But it says AR-15 A2 government carbine, and it does have the restricted oil marks on it and everything. But basically, after all that said and done, we'll move forward to about 2013. Colt, they lost their contracts altogether with the government. Everything was gone. So now they're going to have to start focusing on the general public. So they had a lot of licensing stuff they sold off. They made like a 1911 22, Walther did, and they put Colt's name on it. They had things like this knife here. It says Colt right here, and if you open it up, the knife says Colt right on it. And it's a cool knife, but Colt didn't make it. They sold their licensing off to get themselves out of financial trouble again. Well, and about, I don't know, 2016 or so, there was a little rumors going around Colt was in trouble again. So they decided to start reviving their name. So they started producing revolvers again. So 2017, the little Colt Cobra came out, which was a remake of a little 38 special revolver they made since like the 30s. And as soon as that came out, I was like, oh, they're going to do it. They're going to release all these snake guns out again. So they just followed suit. The next year, the King Cobra came out. And then in the year 2020, the almighty Colt Python came out. And this is the Colt Python from the 2020 batch. This is a newer model one. And like I said, I've gone over all these. I'm not going to tell you a lot of the history on these guns, but this is one of the new release Colt Pythons. And what they did is they do what they do. They're really good at manufacturing. They figured out that CNC machines are as good, if not better, than human beings. And they started CNCing these things. But Colt made one of their awful mistakes, and this gun had to be right. I mean, they had people, ever since they stopped making this one here in the late 90s, they had people calling there every single day. When are you going to make this Python? I'd like to have another Colt Python. Please, I want to see the Colt Python come back out again. So they answered the call. They came out with this thing. They simplified it. There's a lot less moving parts in here. The whole action's different and everything, but it is an awesome, awesome gun. I mean, awesome. But in my opinion, they rushed it out the door because they had to get it out because all the rumors was out. And the first couple of them, this thing's going to be under a microscope, and it will be for the rest of our existence. So the first couple of them, they had a problem with the cylinder rotating. And what it turned out to be, a couple of these screws were loose on the side plate on very few of them. And it was not a widespread problem, but a couple popular YouTubers had problems with them. And, oh, God, it just went viral. And, oh, these things are junk. All the people that had these said these things are junk. There's a couple of them came out with cosmetic issues. And if I was Colt, I would have just halted releasing this thing till I knew every single one of them was perfect. Every one of them was perfect. But they didn't. They rushed them out. I think that's just about died down now. You still see people complaining about these things, how bad they are. The cylinder doesn't rotate on them. And all those people have never even owned one. They never even had one. So the following year, they got the biggest one out. They got the Anaconda. This is the 44 Magnum one. And this gun, when it originally came out in the middle of all the strike years and all that. And Colt was once again late to the game. Smith & Wesson came out with the 44 Magnum in 1955, same year that Colt came out with this Python right here, the blued Python. And everybody always wondered why they didn't make this gun here in 44 Magnum. And they just never did. They never made a 44 Magnum until 1990. When they lost, a couple years after they lost this military contract, they came out with the Colt Anaconda. And guys, I'm telling you right now, it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. They wanted to make it look like the famous Python, so they put the ventilator red, the full underlug on it. It was not. And I have a video comparing this gun to one of the original Colt Anacondas. And I've said this many times, I do not sell firearms. I hold on to them because I like them. I sold that one as quick as I could when I got it because it was an absolute piece of garbage. It was a disappointment to me. But 2000, I think 21 or 22, they came out with this this Anaconda here, and this has the exact same action as the newer style Python. So all the people's wishes, why didn't you ever make a Python in 44 Magnum? Well, now they do. And this thing is awesome. And I have videos of all these. I have them comparing all these. This is probably the coolest modern revolver that there is. This Colt Anaconda 44 Magnum. But Colt's always been known to, for their fine finish work and their attention they pay to details. They always have the greatest looking stuff. I mean, just look at this finish on this thing and look how all the corners there's no sharp edges on them or anything like that. It doesn't matter which one you look at. They all look the same. This one's a lot newer than that one. And just look at the attention to detail. I did a video here. I compared some of their newer 1911s to this thing, and look at the finish on this thing. This is from the mid-70s. I think this one was made in 1976. It's the Gold Cup National Match. And the finish work and the handwork that goes into them. I mean, they just always have produced a very high quality firearm. I mean, just very high quality. So look at the bluing on these guns. It's just absolutely unbelievable. If you look at them, they look like mirrors. There's nothing like them anywhere. But as time is going on, the quality's going downhill because nobody cares anymore. They don't have people hand polishing stuff. So they can make a stainless steel revolver and make it function just as fine. They can put these on buffer wheels, on machines, and make them shiny and all that stuff. But I'm waiting for them to come out with the blued one, with the blued new revolvers, and that will be the true sign whether modern technology is caught up with old school stuff. They haven't done that yet. So in 2022, Colt's in financial trouble again. They'd been since 2013. Releasing these things here was an attempt, I think, to revive the company brand and all that. And they almost lost it with this one, with this Python. But, I mean, it was just a few of them. So CZ purchased Colt. It's a Czechoslovakian company. They make very good handguns. They also bought Dan Wesson years ago, and they pretty much saved them. They don't make revolvers anymore. They make really good 1911s, so they already know how to do that. And, I mean, it's like instantly the quality. I mean, I know for a fact this gun was made during the CZ eras because when I bought it new. And just the quality has stepped up. You don't see any bad machine marks or any tooling marks or anything like that. And it's just, guys, people don't like it, but I mean, they did it to themselves. They put themselves in financial distress over so many years, and now a decent company that does have the money to pull them out of this owns them, and they're doing very well now. And they produce some of the prettiest, highest quality production revolvers you can make. They make very good AR-15 still, and I know there's a couple YouTube guys that will sit there and dissect these new Colt AR-15s apart and say they're laser etched and they don't manufacture everything in-house. Well, they don't. The CG is going to do it, and they're going to do it the most efficient way and the best way. They're there to make money. They're not there to please YouTube people. And there's nothing wrong with those rifles. I've fired a couple of them before. I mean, the reason I got this one is this was an actual law enforcement one. It was made during the assault weapons ban. It says that little restricted mark on it, and that's why I got it. I just knew where it came from. But if you offered me a new Colt, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I bought these right here. These are new Colts, and I also have the old ones here. So there's not very much difference. If you take this one right here, the stainless one, this new one, feel the action in it. Can anybody honestly tell me there's that much of a difference in these? There's not going to be, folks. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. And the people that love this old stuff like this are going to hate anything new. Now, I did do a video on these 1911s and showed you how the finish work had went downhill. And I compared this one here, this 1976 one, to like an 80s one of the same gun, and the finish wasn't quite the same. And I compared it to one from like 2010 or 11, and it was even worse than all of them. None of them look bad. They just don't look like this, because this takes a lot of labor, a lot of time, and people really don't care about it anymore. Just the guys that go to gun shows that keep them in boxes and think they're worth $1 million. But folks, I've ran on a long time about this. I really love this company. They've produced very good stuff. They've been in financial trouble time after time after time over the years. They've really got themselves in some deep doo-doo that they've managed to dig out of. And I think this last time they just really couldn't recover from losing all the government contracts and everything, and now CZ owns them, and hopefully they do good things with them. I wish them nothing but the best. I hope they make them into what they always have. I mean, I've personally bought a couple Colts from them. I'm extremely happy with them. I think they're doing a great job with them, and I cheer on keeping the Colt name alive. So I know this is a long video. I didn't go too much into depth on each individual one of these things. If anybody has any questions on them, you feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer any questions about any of these. Every one of these guns has its own separate video, and all you got to do is look on the channel and click on the video, and you know pretty much everything you want to know. But anyway, folks, thank you very much for watching my video, and you folks have a great day.